Now this video is a combination Fieldcraft, combination logistics video. In an infantry unit, you have supporting weapons. The supporting weapons are all those weapon systems meant to support your riflemen. And it's not just a weapon, because if you look on the list here, I include radio batteries. Why? A radio is a weapon also. You can use it to call for indirect fire or for air support if you're in a conventional military. If you're a guerrilla force, you can use that radio to call for indirect fire from mortars or rockets and then do the adjustments to get them dialed in on target. Now, I'm not telling you that everyone has to carry each of these. How this works through history is each soldier or Marine has their individual combat load, and then they would carry something in addition to that to support the supporting weapons. Now, right off the bat here, we'll start off with 1 to 2 belts of belted 7.62 millimeter. Now, the weight of a 100 round belt of 7.62 NATO is around 6.5 pounds. This type of thing goes back to World War II, where troops would carry extra ammo for the machine guns back then. Most of the time, they would carry it in ammo cans. Once you got into Vietnam, that's when you had the soldiers going Tito Bandito, where they would carry the belts crossed across their body. Those belts were placed over the top of their load-bearing equipment so that they could pull them off quickly and toss them at the machine gun team so that they could keep that pig in operation. Next up here, 1 drum of 5.56 millimeter. This would be for the M249 or combat weapons. 4 40 round magazines for the RPK. And I came across a reference that when they changed over to the RPK 74, that 40 round magazine turned into a 45 round magazine. Now, a single drum for the saw, 200 rounds, is 7 pounds. And the individual magazine for the RPK to 45 rounder is 1 2/3 pounds. When we were in the desert, our saw gunners carried 3 drums. That's just what we did. We were engineers, not infantry. So the saw gunner had his 1 drum on the weapon. He had 2 more that were in pouches on his web gear or later body armor, or he would still have it in the bandolier, hanging 1 on either side, and then he would take the strings that hold that can inside the bandolier and also tie it off to the side of his gear so it wouldn't go flopping too far to the front, too far to the back. Each of us in the fire team would support him by carrying 1 additional drum on our rucksack or inside our rucksack, just depended on if you had the pouch or not to carry it. You can support your grenadier by carrying additional 40 millimeter grenades. Now, each 40 millimeter grenade for the M203, M79, 320, 302 weighs approximately 1 pound each. So they don't weigh a hell of a lot. Your grenadier is going to carry as many as he can on himself, and inside his assault pack or rucksack, you can assist him by carrying a few more in your gear or inside your ruck, so that when he runs low, you know, they get passed off to him and he can keep that loop tube in action, providing you close in indirect fire. Or aimed indirect fire is kind of the way we used to describe it. Another thing that you can carry is 2 60 millimeter mortar shells. Now, currently, the weight of a 60 millimeter mortar shell is around 3 pounds. When you go through and read in history going back to World War II, infantry even back then, they would support the platoon mortar by carrying 2 60 millimeter mortars inside their musette bag. Go into Vietnam, they would have those strapped to the top of their ruck or right on the inside of their rucksack, so that if they had a 60 mil mortar, they could pull that off, pass it to the gunner, and he could start dropping rounds on target, or continue to drop rounds on target. Another thing for carrying, 1 to 2 recoilless rifle rounds, or RPGs. Now, the info I got for recoilless rifle is for the Carl Gustav, so 84 millimeter, and each of those rounds weighs 7.5 pounds average. Different types of rounds are going to have different weights. On RPGs, the base PG-7 round is 5 pounds, up to the dual warhead. The Vampire rounds is the name that's actually for it, is 10 pounds. So you're supporting your recoilless or your RPG gunner by carrying in additional rounds so that he can engage different targets. Maybe you have more armored vehicles showing up than you anticipated, or maybe you're using them to take out bunkers and that stuff because you're clearing a field fortification. Now, and I can tell you on this from experience because I am a qualified, or at least was a qualified, javelin gunner. It really helps if someone helps carry an additional anti-tank guided missile reload. Each of those missiles is fucking heavy. The weight of the missile in the tube is around 35 pounds. The gunner typically is going to have at most 2. One that's going to be attached to the launcher, and one that's on his back. That's at most. On average, especially depending on when you go off of the terrain, if it's going to be hilly and that stuff, you're going through the woods, he's probably only going to have 1. But if it's wide open, you're in the desert and stuff, and it's not extremely hot, the gunner could carry a couple of them if he had to. Radio batteries. I'm going off of the weight of a BA 5590, which is the standard battery that is used in military man-pack radios currently by the U.S. military. And those weigh approximately 2.25 pounds each. Don't forget to carry extra radio batteries. And keep them inside the wrapper until you're going to use them. The batteries come inside a cardboard box, which is inside a plastic overwrap. Leave it that way until you need it, because if those batteries get wet and moisture actually gets inside the battery itself through a crack or the little vent hole that's on it, those batteries explode. And they do have the strength of a hand grenade. How do I know that? Because we played with them in Korea when we weren't supposed to. And I'm not going to go any further into that one. Now, things that would not count for supporting your supporting weapons: anti-personnel mines, claymores, placed anti-personnel mines. A claymore weighs approximately 3.5 pounds. A Russian PMN-2 weighs around 1 pound. The U.S. military, you would typically carry 1 claymore. That would be in addition to this stuff and your basic combat loadout. The Russian military, the standard for them was 1 claymore type mine, a Mon 50, or 2 PMN-2s, or 2 Palm Z stake mines. Another thing that does not count, because it is an individual piece of ordnance that everyone was trained on or is supposed to be trained on, is the M72 Law Rocket. Those weigh approximately 5.5 pounds still inside the tube. Another thing that does not count is your bandolier of rifle mags, your extra magazines for each rifleman, should it be required that they have to carry them or they choose to carry them extras. Each rifle magazine for the M16 AR-15 platform is approximately 1 pound each. So, how much weight should the individual person carry? According to studies by the U.S. military, they should carry no more than 1/3 their body weight. And I can tell you from the global war on terrorism, didn't matter what theater, that 1/3 limitation, they said, yeah, that works in peacetime and training. We're in war. You carry what we tell you, what you can handle till you drop. So, there you go. Some references for you to go off of on how you can keep your supporting weapons in action longer, keeping those monsters fed so that they can chew up the enemy. Now, for all my engineer brothers in the Patriot and Militia movements, always remember, essay ons.